ग्लेशियर। हम इस वीडियो से हम लोग अपनी और स्टडी को कंटिन्यू करेंगे, मतलब कि भी हम पढ़ रहे हैं BT101 पर इकोलॉजी, बायोडाइवर्सिटी एंड एवोल्यूशन 1। आई गेस मेरा सेशन एक्सपायर हो गया है, सो कर लेते हैं हम लोग इन अगेन। और फिर हम लेसन नंबर 66 तक हमारा हो गया था ग्लोबल वार्मिंग तक, और अब 67 से स्टार्ट करेंगे। 67 से लेकर मेरी पूरी कोशिश है कि आज 86 इसके लेक्चर कंप्लीट कर लूँ मैं, ठीक है? तो लेट्स सी, होप फॉर द बेस्ट। एंड हम चलते हैं आगे। हमारे पास हम लोग चलते हैं आगे। हमारा टॉपिक नंबर 67 स्टार्ट होने वाला है। इसको कर लेते हैं क्लिक। ये हमारे पास ओपन हो गया है। अब हम इसका प्री असेसमेंट ले लेते हैं फटाफट से ही, ठीक है? तो प्री असेसमेंट हम ले लेंगे और उसके बाद आगे चलते हैं। इकोलॉजिकल सिचुएशन ऑकर्स इन इकोसिस्टम वेयर देयर इज चेंज इन ऑल। सही है। तो ऑर्गेनिज्म कन्वर्ट लाइट एनर्जी टू हीट। Group of organisms belonging to same dash living at the same space and in particular time is known as population. Is this species? So all are correct. Thanks lot। आगे चलते हैं हम, वीडियो को सुन लेंगे। हमारा मेन टॉपिक है इफेक्ट्स ऑफ ग्लोबल वार्मिंग।
प्रीवियस लेक्चर्स में हमने स्टडी किया था कि वाटर इज द टेम्परेचर इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एबायोटिक फैक्टर और फिजिकल फैक्टर, और वो एक बीइंग एन एबायोटिक फैक्टर, इट इज कंट्रोलिंग, इट इज वेरी फाइनली रेगुलेटिंग द लाइफ ऑन द अर्थ। चाहे प्लांट्स, माइक्रोब्स एंड एनिमल्स, इनकी सर्वाइवल में टेम्परेचर एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रोल प्ले करता है। तो इन केस ऑफ ग्लोबल वार्मिंग, अगर हमारी अर्थ का टेम्परेचर ओवरऑल इंक्रीज कर रहा हो, तो वी कैन इमेजिन कि इसके कितने नेगेटिव इंपैक्ट्स आ सकते हैं हमारी इकोसिस्टम की प्रॉपर फंक्शनिंग पे। ऑल द फूड वेब्स, फूड चेन्स, एवरीथिंग कुड बी डिस्टर्ब्ड वेरी इजीली इफ द टेम्परेचर इज कंटिन्यूअसली इंक्रीजिंग। सो ग्लोबल वार्मिंग के इफेक्ट्स को वी कैन डिवाइड दिस और क्लासिफाई दैट इन 3 different categories. The first is its impacts on our environment. Secondly, we will study the effects on the biosphere, and then effects on humans. So let's study what are the effects of this global warming on our environment. So just to have a picture or a brief description of these climate changes and the global warming on our aquatic ecosystem, let's watch this video.
Climate change has consequences for our oceans, our weather, our food sources, and our health. Ice sheets, such as Greenland and Antarctica, are melting. The extra water that was once held in glaciers causes sea levels to rise and spills out of the oceans, flooding coastal regions. Warmer temperatures also make weather more extreme. This means not only more intense major storms, floods, and heavy snowfall, but also longer and more frequent droughts. These changes in weather pose challenges. Growing crops becomes more difficult. The areas where plants and animals can live shift, and water supplies are diminished. In addition to creating new agricultural challenges, climate change can directly affect people's physical health. In urban areas, the warmer atmosphere creates an environment that traps and increases the amount of smog. This is because smog contains ozone particles, which increase rapidly at higher temperatures. Exposure to higher levels of smog can cause health problems such as asthma, heart disease, and lung cancer. While the rapid rate of climate change is caused by humans, humans are also the ones who can combat it. If we work to replace fossil fuels with renewable energy sources like solar and wind, which don't produce greenhouse gas emissions, we might still be able to prevent some of the worst effects of climate change.
So the first impact of this global warming or increase in the global temperature is shrinking of glaciers. हमें मालूम है कि हमारे सबसे बड़ा जो एक ice reserves है, that is present on our poles. So it's present on Arctic pole and Antarctic pole. And these ice reserves, they are providing the water, they are responsible for the water currents, and the water currents are responsible for controlling the weather conditions and the biodiversity and aquatic ecosystem directly and indirectly on the land as well. So अगर Arctic sea ice is shrinking, और इसका रेट जो climate scientists ने calculate किया, that is decreasing 2.7% per decade since 1978. So the size or the mass of ice glaciers, it is being shrunken, and the maximum area of the frozen ground, it has decreased by the 7% in the northern hemisphere since 1900. So this is a very alarming situation because the glaciers are melting. So we should imagine how it would bring the changes in our oceans and ultimately in our weather and the stored reserves of the water. So if we look at this image of Greenland, which is a frozen island, here we can see in 1992 that was the area of the Greenland which was not frozen. So in that area which is present in the middle, ये वो area जो कि glaciers की form में है, जिसको कि हम cryosphere कहते हैं, और the frozen water. So in 1902 this is a really big area. अगर हम इसको compare करें 2002 की satellite image के साथ, so we can easily see कि ये जो red area है that has been, it doesn't have any ice. Ice की एक melting के result में glaciers overall जो एक frozen area है that is reducing, and melting of these cryosphere or the frozen water, it is adding more water in our seas. So resultantly हमारी sea का level जो है वो increase होना शुरू हो जाता है, and during the period of 1961 to 2003 an increase of average increase of 1.8 millimeter has been observed in sea levels. So we assume कि हम 21st century के दौरान ही 5 millimeter का increase एक sea level में per year base पर observe किया जाएगा, and this increase of 5 millimeter per year, this sounds really terrific. Because अगर sea level increase कर रहे हैं, it means कि हमारा land area shrink कर रहा है, which means कि हमारी estuarine ecosystem is expanding towards the land. So salinity is being changed and it is changing the ecosystem. It would change everything on this planet if there is a rise in sea level at this continuously 5 millimeter per year rate. So the low-lying areas, small island states, हो सकता है कि किसी एक point के ऊपर all these islands they would be swollen by this rising sea water. Salt water की intrusion, there will be expansion of the salt water into estuaries, into the freshwater ecosystem, and we know कि हमारी aquatic species are extremely sensitive to the salinity. अगर saline water is expanding towards the land, it would kill the estuarine ecosystem, it will damage the freshwater ecosystem, or in future if this rate of expansion of sea is continuously happening, is occurring, resultantly हमारी freshwater reserves जो हैं बहुत बड़े risk पे चले जाएंगे, because it will disturb the whole balance of freshwater ecosystem and marine water ecosystem. So the other impact is the low-lying coast. coastal cities, वो सारी cities which are present on the coastal areas, they would be directly affected by increase in sea level. So they will have to reseed. उनको वापस जो है एक reduction की तरफ जाना पड़ेगा और it will disturb the human population. The non-polar glaciers we have seen, जैसे Greenland is the one example of the polar glaciers. So वो frozen ice जो कि non-polar regions में है, but it is present on peaks of the mountains. For example, in this image we can see the Mount Kilimanjaro in Japan. In 1993, a vast area of this peak was covered by the frozen water or the ice. लेकिन अगर हम इसकी वो पिक्चर जो 2000 में ली गई है उसके साथ इसे कंपेयर करें तो we can see that area is very much reduced. तो सिर्फ polar regions में ही global warming से ice की melting नहीं हो रही, बल्कि वो सारे glaciers जो कि non polar regions में हैं और ice caps जो कि non polar regions में हैं, they are also melting and they are adding up more water in our water bodies, which will result in complete change in our weathers. It will bring more flooding, but it will change the water cycle because we are adding more water vapors, at the same time more water is being added in oceans, और water currents से जो wind currents generate होंगे उनमें जो pattern changes आते हैं तो resultantly हमारे wind patterns भी change होंगे, हमारे oceans के water current patterns भी change होंगे और weather patterns will be automatically changed. So because of this rise in sea level, this melting of ice, there has been observed changes in continental precipitation as well. So there is a significant increase in rainfall in North and Southern America, Northern Europe, North and Central Asia. But at the same time, Mediterranean region, Southern Africa or parts of South Asia, they are facing a lesser or reduced rate of precipitation, which would result in हमारे overall annual season that will be more drier and lesser rain as compared to the previous years. So this is a very negative impact of the global warming because water is important for the life in any ecosystem.
Thermal regulation has been very crucial for sustainability of life on Earth. Any change in this can have very drastic effects for the planet. These effects can be classified into three classes: physical, environmental effects on biosphere, and effects on humans. ठीक है, melting of polar ice caps and land glaciers is one of the critical effects of global warming. The ice volume has shrunk by 2.7% since 1978, while overall ground covered by ice has decreased by 7% since the beginning of the 20th century. As a result of all this ice melting, the water is being added to oceans, thus causing the rise of sea levels. This is the direct effect of global warming, which is a great threat to coastal cities and population centers. Since 1961 to 2003, the sea levels were observed to rise for 1.8 millimeters. However, in recent years, the average annual rise observed in the sea levels is 5 millimeters. This phenomenon has posed a significant threat to island nations, which are facing existential threat in coming years. Rising sea levels are also responsible for salt water intrusion into aquifer, may cause floods and can destroy agricultural lands in river delta on the coast. Similar to polar caps, the land glaciers are also melting due to increased global temperature. These non-polar glaciers serve as sources of fresh water on land. These glaciers are also facing reduction size each year due to high temperatures. Global warming has also caused alteration in precipitation patterns across the globe, where some areas are receiving more rainfall while some very little or no rain. This lesson will learn about effects of global warming, melting of polar ice and non-polar glaciers. So your PPT तो कर लेते हैं डाउनलोड, दोबारा से इनको डाउनलोड करके देखते हैं होती हैं तो फिर फाइनली हमारी पीपीटीज हो गई हैं, हम इनको पढ़ लेते हैं। Effects of global warming, physical environmental effects, effects on biosphere, effects on humans. Arctic sea ice shrinking, decrease in extent 2.7% per decade since 1978. Maximum area of seasonally frozen ground decreased by 7% in northern hemisphere since 1900. और ये जनाब इफेक्ट्स ग्लोबल वार्मिंग के 2002 में और ये 1992 में। ग्लोबल सी लेवल राइज एवरेज रेट ऑफ 1.8 मिलीमीटर्स पर ईयर 1961 to 2003. Likely sea level rise during the 21st century 5 millimeters per year. Low-lying areas, small island states may disappear. Saltwater intrusion into aquifers, floods. Low-lying coastal cities will be at the forefront of impacts. ठीक है, उसके बाद non-polar glaciers, widespread retreat during the 20th century. Continental precipitation, significant increase in North and South America, Northern Europe, North and Central Asia, drying in Mediterranean, Southern Africa, parts of South Asia. ठीक है, डन हो गया हमारा टॉपिक, बिल्कुल भी कंप्लीट हो गया है। पोस्ट असेसमेंट नहीं दिया नहीं पोस्ट असेसमेंट नहीं चाहिए, ठीक है। सो that 36.1% of ozone is damaged by solvent cleaning products, aerosols, air conditioning foam products. Source of temperature increase in Earth's atmosphere is, all options are correct. Deforestation, greenhouse effect, pollution. Oh yes, सारे incorrect. Cyanobacteria are sensitive to X-rays. All options are correct. Infrared radiation Next, 40% of carbon dioxide emission come from burning of trees, burning of fossil fuels. 40%, right? Gasoline, engine, building structure. Greenhouse effect is enhanced by increase in carbon dioxide, decrease in temperature, decrease in water vapor, reduction in carbon dioxide. Good. आगे चलते हैं हम लोग। थैंक्स लॉर्ड, ये सारे अब ठीक हैं और अब चलते हैं आगे। नेक्स्ट टॉपिक इज 68, टॉपिक नंबर 68, लेक्चर नंबर 68, इफेक्ट्स ऑफ ग्लोबल वार्मिंग 2। सो इसकी वीडियो असेसमेंट ले लेते हैं सबसे पहले। Which sequence is true about use of energy? Light energy to chemical energy to inorganic, light energy to electrical energy, light heat energy to chemical, light energy to chemical energy to organic molecules. ये भी repeat हो रहा है। Sulfur oxidation energy are the examples of chemoautotrophs. Chemoautotrophs. Photosynthesis are redox reaction. Done हो गया जना, आगे चलते हैं, इसको कर लेते हैं। Okay. डन हो गया। उसके बाद आगे चलते ये वाला जो हमारा वीडियो है इसको देख लेते हैं।
Another impact of this global warming on our environment is extreme weather conditions. So we have observed over this last few decades that there is a frequency of drought conditions. जिसमें कि बहुत ज़्यादा जो है वो कह साली कुछ ऐसे एरियाज में जहाँ पर कि रेनफॉल रेट ऑफ प्रेसिपिटेशन डिक्रीज हो गया, वहाँ पर ओवरऑल टेम्परेचर इंक्रीज हो गया. So we have observed the drought conditions, and then there is a heat wave. Weather is fine for some time, and then suddenly there would be a wave of heat, and this is bringing a temperature shock. वो species जो कि इस temperature shock को tolerate नहीं कर पाएंगी, they won't be able to survive. अगर ये ऐसी heat waves जो है वो continue रहती हैं. So we have seen over the last 10 years कि hurricanes, cyclones, typhoons, इनकी occurrence या इनकी जो number of appearance है वो overall increase हो गई. So this increase has been observed from 1960 until 2010, and it is still continued. We are observing hurricanes in USA, in American region, and in Pacific Ocean and in Indian Ocean. So this is showing that weather patterns are changing, and it's becoming extreme day by day. So we have the other thing is extremely wet or dry events within the monsoon period. The monsoon period, which is the precipitation period, और एक बहुत long region है जहाँ पर कि हमें monsoon rainfalls को हम observe करते हैं. But this pattern is being changed. There would be a wet time जिसमें कि rainfall जो है वो continuously होती रहती है, and then there will be a break, और वो time period बिल्कुल dry गुजरता है, and we don't observe any kind of precipitation. So there are this pattern of monsoon rainfall is being changed, and it is bringing the shocks, wet and dry periods. Ocean properties, biochemical properties, physical properties of ocean water is also changing because temperature, जैसे atmospheric temperature जो है वो increase करता है, carbon dioxide का rate of solubility is also increasing in the water. Oxygen is totally opposite. जब temperature high है तो rate of solubility of carbon dioxide is higher, but when temperature is warm, rate of oxygen solubility is lower. So once it is pulling out or extracting more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, और carbon dioxide जब से ही water में dissolve होती है, it would react with the water and will make carbonic acid. Resultantly, ocean water की pH drop करना शुरू कर गई, and it will become acidic. And this lower pH or the acidic pH we have discussed in the case of acid rains that it is not good for the aquatic animals. And those which have a lower tolerance range for the pH, they will be eliminated from that ecosystem. And because of this global warming, the temperature of water is higher, so oxygen की solubility का rate भी drop कर जाता है. So resultantly, there is a lesser volume of oxygen, dissolved oxygen in our oceans and seas, which will cause a deoxygenation for the animals and plants which need oxygen during the process of respiration. So it is causing a suffocation, and it is directly impacting the health of animal life in our ocean bodies. There are changes in ecosystem. Obviously, because our ecosystem, they are dependent upon the temperature, they are dependent upon the weather patterns. अगर temperature change है तो weather patterns change हो रहे हैं. Spring is coming earlier, so winter is being shrinking. उसका टाइम पीरियड श्रिंक होने से स्प्रिंग इज हैपनिंग बिफोर इट्स टाइम. सो जैसे ही वेदर चेंज होता है, विंटर इज गोइंग एंड स्प्रिंग इज कमिंग, तो वो स्पीशीज जो कि पोलर रीजन से मूव कर रही हैं और वो रिसीड कर जाती हैं टुवर्ड्स दोस एरियाज वेयर द टेम्परेचर ड्यूरिंग विंटर इज कंपैरेटिवली फेवरेबल, वो बहुत जल्दी ही अपनी हाइबरनेशन से बाहर निकलेंगी, एंड देन दे विल गो टुवर्ड्स द पोलर एरियाज. उन हाइबरनेटिंग स्पीशीज के साथ साथ ऐसी स्पीशीज जो कि हाइबरनेट नहीं भी करी, बट दे आर नॉट प्रेजेंट इन द पोलर रीजन्स मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम बिकॉज ऑफ द लॉन्गर विंटर्स, लेकिन चूंकि अब विंटर ड्यूरेशन इज रिड्यूस्ड, दे आर ऑल्सो माइग्रेटिंग टुवर्ड्स द पोल्स. सो इट इज चेंजिंग द स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ इकोसिस्टम. So it is changing the biodiversity present at the specific time periods of the season. So in spring we are observing more higher populations and different species of animals which are inhabiting those polar regions, or they are closer to those regions which are close to near to the poles. So then there is an expansion of deserts. Those areas which are facing the dry conditions, वहाँ पर temperature is being higher and higher, so resultantly life will not be able to survive in those areas. So those areas will be devoid of plants and animals. इसका रिजल्ट ये निकलेगा कि हमारी जो डेजर्ट एरियाज हैं वो और एक्सपेंड करना शुरू हो जाएंगे. Ocean acidification, as we just discussed, carbonic acid की addition की वजह से pH जो है that will drop, or it is continuously dropping actually because of this global warming. So it will result in changing the aquatic life, the aquatic ecosystem. It could damage the coral reefs, which are very sensitive to the temperature, which are very sensitive to the pH, and corals are responsible for maintaining the aquatic ecosystem. And then it would affect the fisheries, all those species which are protected, and the other species of plants and animals which are present in that aquatic ecosystem. So this increase in temperature and increase in acidity, that is very much threatening for the life species in water ecosystem. Impacts on humans. Humans are responsible for the global warming. We are the major culprits. So obviously we will have to suffer too. All these changes which are coming which are appearing in our weather patterns, in precipitation, these changed precipitation patterns, they would directly affect the humans, because humans, they prefer to live in those areas where the water is present, food is available, and temperature is moderate. So they wouldn't prefer any harsh conditions. हमारी human population deserts में, polar regions में बहुत ही limited है, but it is present in the moderate areas. अगर ये precipitation के patterns change होते हैं तो weather के patterns change होंगे. अगर वहाँ पे drought conditions आ रही हैं तो humans will not be able to survive. अगर over precipitation से flooding की situation आ रही है, then the humans, they will suffer. And this warming of temperature और rainfall के pattern change होने से जो चीज़ directly affect हो रही है, that is agriculture, and we are depending upon agriculture for our survival. So resultant, this the length of growing season would change because the winter is shrinking, spring is coming earlier, and summer is expanding. तो हमें वो crops जिनको कि हम different seasons में cultivate कर रहे हैं, उनका pattern भी change करना पड़ेगा, और उनकी production जो है वो वैसी नहीं रहेगी जैसे कि हमारे past years में हमारे पास आती रही है. So this drought and extreme events, they would decrease the yield of many crops, and it would directly affect the food security and the global economy, because a major portion of human population is earning money from the agriculture, and any kind of negative impact due to global warming on our agriculture, it would directly affect the economy of humans. Because of the change of weather, obviously there would be a shift of changes in the crop varieties. We will have to change the crop varieties according to the seasons. it would affect our economy, it will affect our agricultural practices, and then there will be new pests and diseases. Because pest और diseases की occurrence is also related to the temperature. वो pathogens जो कि बहुत high temperature पे survive नहीं कर पाते हैं, they might not appear during the high temperature seasons. लेकिन अगर उससे किसी और ऐसे regions जहाँ पे कि spring ज़्यादा increase हो गया या फिर वहाँ पे winter duration increase हो गया या वहाँ पे precipitation आना शुरू हो गया, तो ऐसे pathogens जो कि उन conditions में survive कर सकते हैं या वो वहाँ पे compete कर सकते हैं, they would start appearing and there might be occurrence of unexpected diseases outbreaks in different weather conditions. Food security, as we already said, agriculture production जैसे ही change होती है तो food security would be a major issue. It's still an issue. We still are not coping with this issue. लेकिन अगर global warming से food security का issue और enhance हो जाता है तो possibly बहुत से ऐसे countries जिसमें से drought facing countries like African countries, they won't be able to handle this problem. And then there will be thermal stress, there will be heat waves, there will be cold waves, and this imbalance between this temperature, it would bring the shock, and this shock is not suitable for the humans because they are endothermic animals. Extreme events that would be the weather disasters. As we said that the cyclones, typhoons, hurricanes, flooding, it is happening at the higher rate as compared to the previous timings. So in सारे catastrophes का होना human survival के लिए suitable नहीं है. It would direct affect their population, it would cause economic damage, and it would reduce the quality of life in the hit areas. Infectious diseases, for example, malaria, dengue, they would spread because of changes in weather. वो weather conditions जिनमें in mosquitoes ज़्यादा बेहतर survive कर सकते हैं, reproduce कर सकते हैं. So those weather conditions, वो जिन भी regions में होंगी वहाँ पर इस तरह की diseases जो है उनकी outbreak हो सकती है. Air pollution is causing an impact because of the change in weather. There would be more pollution in air. There would be suspension of air pollutants for the longer time in the air, and the wind would also disperse those air pollutants to the different areas. So that is another impact. अगर global warming को हम specifically पाकिस्तान के scenario में देखें तो as recent climatic trends which have been provided by Department of Meteorology Pakistan, उसके according जो changes in पिछले decades में पाकिस्तान में के climate में appear हुए हैं, वहाँ पर there is a rise in mean temperature of 0.6 to 1 degree centigrade in arid regions mostly, and it includes the coastal areas, arid mountains, and hyper arid plains. And then there is an increase of 0.5 to 0.7% in the solar radiations over the southern half of the country. So we can imagine that this increase in solar radiation is further increasing the temperature of that region. And then there is a decrease of cloud cover up to 3 to 5% in the central Pakistan, which is resulting in increasing in the sunshine hours. It is increasing the intensity of solar radiations in those areas. So there is a high temperature, and then there is more intense solar radiation. And then there is increase of 5% in net irrigation water requirements with no changes in the rainfall. Because we are these dry conditions, they are increasing the demand for the water. लेकिन at the same time monsoon patterns में आने वाले changes, they are not adding up more rainfall, they are not bringing more rainfall. So हमारे पास input of water जो है वो वैसी ही है या थोड़ी सी उससे भी कम होगी जितने के पहले decades में कुछ 10 साल पहले या उससे 20 साल पहले थी. लेकिन water की demand is increasing because of expanding dry areas. So that's how we can imagine कि global warming global level पर और एक country के level पर, and then at the level of one ecosystem, it has a very direct impacts and the negative impacts on all those populations which are living in that habitat. So this problem must be controlled as a priority. Carbon dioxide emission and all other greenhouse gases emission, they must be controlled. इसके साथ साथ deforestation और addition of pollutants जो कि blindly हम अपने environment में adapt करते चले जा रहे हैं, इनके लिए वो strict और controlled measures होने चाहिए which must be strictly followed. And even at the level of an individual, there should be a public awareness about this global warming, because we are going to face very hard time in our futures.
So friends, हम लोगों की वीडियो हो गई कंप्लीट. हम चलते हैं अपनी रीडिंग की तरफ. Extreme weather is one of the important effects of global warming. The alteration in weather patterns have been observed across the globe as the frequency of draft heat waves, typhoons, hurricanes, and cyclones has increased from 1960. Similarly, since 1980, the extremely wet or dry events during the monsoon periods have also increased. The species which can't survive the temperature shock due to these extreme weather would be at greater risk. Oceans are also being affected due to global warming. The higher atmospheric concentration of carbon dioxide results in increased concentration of carbon dioxide dissolved in the oceans. This results in lowering of oceans pH and makes them acidic. On the other hand, the oxygen concentration in oceans decreases with increase in temperature as it is less soluble in water. Then carbon dioxide. This phenomenon is called ocean deoxygenation, or our ecosystem is dependent on abiotic factor like water temperature, etc. Global warming is not only affecting the temperature regulation and water cycle, rather its drastic effects are more far-reaching and long-lasting for any ecosystem. Weather patterns are distributed as the spring is coming earlier and earlier, thus shrinking the winters each year. This has affected the organisms residing in the polar regions as their hibernation, feeding, and reproductive behaviors are directly affected. Alternations of water cycle, precipitation patterns, and how weather is causing the expansion of deserts. This is affecting the survival of animals and plants, which are facing the expanding deserts. Similarly, acidification of oceans is causing the damage to coral reefs, fishes, protected species, and other natural coastal resources of value to society. Okay, here global warming is also affecting humans as well. The changed precipitation patterns, warming of lower altitudes, droughts, and extreme events are all affecting economic activities like agriculture throughout the planet. As a result of these effects, the agricultural yield will be affected as the length of growing seasons will change. These will ultimately result in global economic inequality. Due to shift in weather patterns, the biodiversity will also be affected as new pests and diseases will emerge, threatening crop yields and food security. Some infectious diseases such as malaria, dengue, etc. could also spread due to the alteration of precipitation patterns. Global warming has also affected Pakistan as an increase of 0.6 to 1 ठीक है 1 0.6 to 1 सेंटीग्रेड. अच्छा, C का क्या मतलब हो सकता है? 1 सेंटीग्रेड होता है नहीं कुछ और have been observed in the arid coastal areas, arid mountains, and hyper-arid plains of the country. A significant increase 0.5 to 0.7 solar radiation was recorded in the southern half of the country. A decrease of about up to 5% has been observed in the cloud cover in the central Pakistan, causing increase in sunshine hours. Increased sunshine causes more evaporation of water in rivers and canals, thus causing an increase of 5% in the irrigation water requirement without any change in rainfall. In this lesson, we will learn about effects of global warming. सही होगा. उसके बाद हमने प्लीज पढ़नी है इसकी effects of global warming 2. Frequency of extreme weather, frequency of drought, heat waves, typhoons, or hurricanes and cyclones increased from 1960 until 2010. Extremely wet or dry events within the monsoon period have increased since 1980. Changes in ocean properties, increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations have led to an increase in dissolved carbon dioxide, increase in ocean acidity, oxygen levels decrease because oxygen is less soluble in warmer water. An effect known as ocean deoxygenation. Changes in ecosystem, earlier timing of spring events, poleward and upward shifts in plant and animal ranges, expansion of deserts or Ocean acidification threatens damage to coral reefs, fisheries, protected species, and other natural sources of value to society. Impacts of human change precipitation patterns, warming of low altitudes, agricultural production, length of growing season will change, drought extreme events will decrease yield, global economic inequality. Impacts on humans, biodiversity shift, changes in crop varieties, new pests and diseases, food security, thermal threats, heat waves or cold spells. Extreme events, weather disasters, personal injuries, damage and disruption to infrastructure. Impacts on humans may he have infectious diseases, malaria, dengue, air pollution, impact of some air pollutants. Recent climatic trends in Pakistan Department of Meteorology. rise in mean temperature of 0.6 to 1 degree centigrade in arid coastal areas, arid mountains and hyper arid plains. 0.5 to 0.7% increase in solar radiation over southern half of country, 3 to 5% increase in cloud cover in central Pakistan with increase in sunshine hours. Recent climatic trends in Pakistan, 5% increase in net irrigation water requirement with no change in rainfall. डन हो गया. अब हमारे पास है Earth's atmosphere temperature has risen about that since 1900. Greenhouse effect is enhanced by increase in carbon dioxide. ओके ठीक है बस क्रॉस हमारे टॉपिक हो गया कंप्लीट. आगे चलते हैं. इस टॉपिक का नाम है बायोमैग्निफिकेशन और इसमें हम क्विज ले लेंगे. सबसे पहले तो sulfur oxidizers and reducers are the examples of autotrophs. सही. heat is radiated in the form of infrared radiations और community comprises of individuals belong to different species. डन हो गया. आगे अपनी वीडियो को सुन लेते हैं.
Biomagnification is another negative phenomenon which is a result of the pollution, all the types of pollution. Biomagnification is in fact this increasing concentration of the toxic element in tolerant animals tissue. So overall हम इसको describe ऐसे करते हैं कि इस कुछ ऐसे toxic compounds हैं जिनकी rate of degradation is very slow और through the food chain, for example the first trophic level which is the plant, ये toxic compounds soil में से these are absorbed by the plants but they are not degraded, so they are present in the body of that plant. And once this plant is eaten by any herbivore, so it will be transferred as such to the next trophic level. There is possibility कि उसी कुछ amount जो है वो उसकी next trophic level में transfer ना हो, लेकिन most of the amount of those toxic compounds it will be transferred to the next trophic level. So that herbivore is feeding on more plants which already have that toxic compound. So the more toxic compound is being accumulated in the body of that herbivore. So that's how that compound is being accumulated and magnified in the body of that animal, and it is present in the tissues of that animal. So why the compound is toxic but the animal is tolerating it? The reason is that compound is toxic for different species, but that animal which is eating on that crop which having that toxic compound, that species is tolerant to the very high level of that toxic compound. तो उसकी higher tolerance की वजह से ये accumulate करते चले जाती हैं और इनकी amount उस animal की body में magnify होना शुरू हो जाती है. And this phenomenon is called biomagnification. And this biomagnification is actually a result of 3 different activities which we would discuss later. And let's study how this biomagnification occurs. In this image we can see these are the compounds which is represented by this sign of plus. So it is a toxic compound or a toxin, and this toxin from the soil is absorbed by these plants. और जब this next trophic level पे जो herbivore है, for example the rat, it is feeding on this crop, ये toxic compounds उसकी body tissues के अंदर accumulate होना शुरू हो जाते हैं. The animal present on the secondary consumer level, it is feeding on this rat जिसके tissues में वो toxic compound already present है. So once it is feeding on the different rats or the multiple rats, this toxic compound will be accumulated in the tissues of this secondary consumer. And when this secondary consumer is eaten by this apex consumer, similarly the same amount of this toxin will be transferred in the body of the apex consumer. And apex consumer is feeding on many secondary consumers already having these toxins. So resultantly, चूंकि इस टॉक्सिक कंपाउंड की डिग्रेडेशन नहीं हो रही लेकिन एडिशन होता चला जा रहा है, तो उसके रिजल्ट में जैसे ही हम नीचे से ऊपर की तरफ ट्रॉफिक लेवल्स में या ट्रॉफिक चेन्स में जाते हैं तो वहां पर आपको उस टॉक्सिक कंपाउंड की एक्यूमुलेशन और मैग्निफिकेशन नजर आना शुरू होती है. सो दिस कंपाउंड इज बीइंग एक्यूमुलेटेड. लोअर लेवल पर इसकी कंसंट्रेशन कम है, जैसे जैसे आप ऊपर नेक्स्ट ट्रॉफिक लेवल पर इट्स हायर, next trophic level much higher, and at the apex predator level it is very high and accumulated in large amounts in the tissue of these apex predators. So it occurs as a result of three activities, this process of biomagnification. The first is called as the persistence. Compound is persistent, it is not easy to be degraded naturally. So this substance can be broken down easily by environmental processes, for example the catalyst and the enzymes, microbes, temperature. The life of this compound is very long. The second activity is the food chain energetics. This substance concentration it increases progressively as it is moving up the food chain. Exactly वही activity है जिस पे अभी हमने उस इमेज में देखा कि जब आप लोअर ट्रॉफिक लेवल से हाई ट्रॉफिक लेवल में जाते हैं तो टॉक्सिक कंपाउंड की कंसंट्रेशन जो है वो उसमें एडिशन होना शुरू होता है और वो मैग्नीफाई होना शुरू हो जाती है. The third activity responsible for biomagnification is low or non-existent rate of internal degradation or excretion of the substance. Because the substance is it has a chemical nature. कि animal kidneys are not excreting it as a waste product. Because we know our kidneys and our digestive system, it is excreting or getting rid of those wastes which are coming either through the decomposition of nitrogenous compounds, for example ammonia. तो ये तो किडनीज उसको nitrogenous wastes को रिलीज करते हैं या फिर हमारा डाइजेस्टिव सिस्टम फूड से आने वाले वेस्ट मटेरियल्स को फीकल मैटर की फॉर्म में रिलीज कर देता है. लेकिन ये कंपाउंड्स दे आर नॉट डिटेक्टेड बाय किडनीज एंड द लार्ज इंटेस्टाइन, सो दे रिमेन अनडिटेक्टेड इन द टिश्यूज ऑफ दैट एनिमल व्हिच हैज ईटन इट along with food. So major reason why these are not being excreted, that reason could be the insolubility of these compounds in water, because kidneys totally dependent हैं कि वो सिर्फ उन्हीं compounds को extract कर सकते हैं और excrete कर सकते हैं which are soluble in water. So if these are insoluble, they would stay inside the tissues of that animal for longer time period. So let's explain it with the help of another example. If we look at this is the amount of the toxin parts per million, and the example is DDT. So DDT is a very important example of biomagnification. So DDT is used as an insecticide, pesticide. Once it is dissolved in the water, it is being absorbed by algae or the plants. So अगर हम ये देखें कि सबसे लोएस्ट ट्रॉफिक लेवल जो कि algae है, इस पे इसकी कंसंट्रेशन 0.04 parts per million है. So when this algae is eaten by the zooplankton, concentration is magnified. Zooplanktons are consumed by the small size fishes, and here the concentration is again magnified because small fishes they are eating so many zooplanktons. And then the large fishes which are feeding on many small fishes, they are accumulating a larger volume, larger amount of DDT in this tissue. So it's 7.336 parts per million. And if these large fishes are consumed by humans, तो वहाँ पर भी इसकी अमाउंट जो है वो फर्दर accumulate होना शुरू हो जाएगी और मैग्नीफाई होती है. तो इन केस ऑफ ह्यूमन इट इज 13.55 parts per million reported. इससे वी कैन इमेजिन कि लो ट्रॉफिक लेवल पर 0.04 से स्टार्ट होने वाला ये कंपाउंड अपने एपेक्स प्रेडेटर या हाईएस्ट ट्रॉफिक लेवल तक पहुंचते पहुंचते मल्टीपल टाइम्स मैग्नीफाई हो चुका होता है. So this is biomagnification which is occurring across the food chain or the different trophic levels. Biomagnification के साथ साथ there is another phenomenon which is called bioaccumulation, जिसे भी हमने observe किया कि instead of multiple trophic level, if this bioaccumulation is happening within one trophic level, then it is known as bioaccumulation. And this bioaccumulation of this compound, it is increase in the amount of that toxin in those tissues of those organisms due to absorption from the food or from the environment directly. Bioconcentration, that is another example of biomagnification, and it occurs when the uptake from the water is greater than excretion, which means animal is getting that toxin in higher amount from the environment, but it is excreting the lesser amount of that toxin through the process of excretion. So वो rate of absorption और rate of excretion में जो difference है उसके result में ये toxic compound उसकी body में accumulate होते रहते हैं. So examples ऐसे वो pollutants की जिनके लिए biomagnification has been observed, because there's not a long list of those compounds which can cause biomagnification. इसमें से सबसे notorious compound is the DDT, and then there is hexachlorobenzene, and PCBs is another example. Toxaphene, monomethyl mercury, that is mercury is also is a heavy metal, और हमारी इंडस्ट्रियल प्रोसेसेस कुछ ऐसे हैं जहाँ पे मरकरी PCBs बहुत ज़्यादा अभी भी यूटिलाइज हो रहे हैं, and they are released as a waste material in water and they are dumped in the landfills as well. DDT is a case study because DDT was that compound which has been identified for the first time, जिसमें bioaccumulation के process जो था वो observe किया गया. So DDT was it was used, but present time में DDT mostly all over the world it is banned to be used as an insecticide. So it was very aggressively used as an insecticide to control malaria, to control the typhus viruses, and it was used to kill mosquitoes. So एक blind use जो था DDT का, it was happening to control because it was a very effective medicine. So it was commonly used after World War II, and then it was realized कि इसका एक overuse जो है वो crops पे किया जाता रहा. Even it was so successful in controlling the pests and the mosquitoes that the inventor or the inventor of this DDT he received the Nobel Prize for its invention. But later it was realized that DDT is not a degradable compound, और ये spray insecticide spray के result में soil, underground water, और वहाँ से water bodies, और फिर it would come back into crops से फिर ये next ऊपर जितने भी उसके trophic levels हैं ये वहाँ पर transfer होती है, and it is being accumulated. So the concentration of DDT it could increase up to 10 million times at the higher trophic level as compared to the lower trophic level. So this is a ridiculously higher level of magnification of any compound. which is especially the toxic. There is one example of DDT accumulation in the water. It is in 0.00003 parts per million in water. Then it is transferred to the zooplankton, from zooplanktons to the small fishes, and from fishes to the apex predator. And when it reaches the apex predator, its amount will be 25 parts per million in this food chain. And this 25 parts per million is 10 million times higher as compared to this amount of DDT in water. So we can imagine how this compound is being magnified and accumulated in tissues of its users. So the problems which the DDT was causing, one example was the egg shell thinning. Shell of eggs in the birds, and in case of other animals, for example the reptiles, it was so thin that animals, they can't incubate it. So if they sit on those eggs to incubate them, it will break the shell. And if the eggs are not incubated, it means there will be no offspring, there will be no progeny in this reproductive season. So that was one example, and it acts as an hormone disruptor. Once it is inside your body, it will mimic as a different hormone. So which means your body is accepting that DDT to function as a specific hormone, and it will imbalance those functions which are regulated by those specific hormones. So the endocrine disruption is another function of DDT. So because it is mimicking the function of estrogen, and estrogen is responsible for feminization in a fetus or in an embryo. So those animals जहाँ पर के sex differentiation is flexible and plastic, वहाँ पर it would skew the sex ratio towards the females, and it will imbalance the ideal ratio of 50-50 between males and females in any natural population. So if there is DDT in the lower vertebrates, it means we are having more females in the next progeny. And the half-life of DDT is very long. It's 15 years, which means it would take 15 years to be degraded, or reaching the half of its original, that is the half-life. So which means if we start with the 100 kilogram of DDT at one stage, after 100 years we would still have 1 kilogram left in our environment. Because of all those problems the DDT was causing, it was strictly banned in USA in 1972, and then later on rest of the world, they also realized the negative impacts of this compound, and it was banned all over the world. But still there are certain countries where there is a lesser awareness, lesser facilities. They are still using DDT as an insecticide to control malaria particularly, and this is happening in many African countries, and they are, because of the poverty, because of the less availability of medication, lower standard of life, they are still illegally using DDT to kill the mosquitoes and to kill the crops pests.
सो फ्रेंड्स, हमारी वीडियो हो गई है कंप्लीट. हम चलते हैं अपनी रीडिंग की तरफ. अब हम लोग रीडिंग कर लेते हैं और पीपीटी को भी जब डाउनलोड कर लेते हैं. Biomagnification is the phenomena where toxic compounds which cannot be degraded or detoxified by environment and living organisms tend to accumulate in the food chain and web. If a pollutant is present in soil, it will be absorbed by the plants. It will be absorbed by the plant's roots along with water and minerals. Since this pollutant cannot be detoxified or degraded, it will continue to accumulate in the plants. When herbivores consume these plants, if they are tolerant to this pollutant or toxin, it will accumulate in their body. The more plant material they consume, the higher quantities of the pollutant will accumulate in their biomass. These herbivores are in turn consumed by their predators, and thus they will also accumulate the pollutant in their bodies. In this manner, a pollutant will move through the food web in the polluted habitat, and at each level the concentration of the pollutant will increase in the body as the apex predator will have highest concentration of the pollutant. There are 3 reasons for biomagnification. One is the pollutant or toxin is persistent as it cannot be degraded by the decomposers and other microbes in the environment. Second is the concentration of the pollutant increases gradually in the food chain. Third is animals consuming this pollutant are either unable to metabolically break it down to excrete it from their bodies. Unlike biomagnification, bioaccumulation is the phenomena where the toxin or pollutant gets accumulated within a trophic level and does not move through our entire food web. Bioconcentration is the phenomena where the intake rates of the toxins are greater than excretion rates. As a result, the pollutant continues to accumulate in the tissues of the organism. Some key pollutants that undergo biomagnification are DDT, hexachlorobenzene, polychlorinated biphenyls, toxaphene and monomethyl mercury, etc. DDT was introduced as pesticide for controlling malaria and typhus, for killing the mosquitoes and lice. It was used in agriculture for killing pests. However, the concentration introduced as pesticide for controlling malaria and typhus for killing the mosquitoes. It was used in agriculture for killing pests. However, the concentration of DDT has increased 10 million times since its introduction. DDT interferes with calcium metabolism and causes eggshell thinning in birds. Eggs become fragile and break during incubation, that is bald eagle, osprey and brown pelicans. It also acts as a hormone disruptor and mimics estrogen, thus affecting the sex ratio in birds. Its half-life is 15 years. In this lesson, we will learn about biomagnification, bioaccumulation, bioconcentration, effects of biomagnification in ecosystem. Okay, done. अब हम लोग के पास हमारी PPTs आ गई हैं, so पढ़ लेते हैं. Biomagnification, increasing concentration of toxic substance in the tissues of tolerant organisms at successively higher levels in the food chain. It occurs as a result of three activities. Concentration of the persistent toxins increases higher up the food chain. It occurs as a result of the three activities. Or persistence, substance cannot be broken down by environmental processes. Food chain energetic, substance concentration increases progressively as it moves up the food chain. Low or non-existent rate of internal degradation or excretion of the substance, often due to water insolubility. और ये है जनाब हमारी बायोमैग्निफिकेशन. एल्गी, zooplankton, स्मॉल फिश, फिर उसके बाद लार्ज फिश और उसके बाद फिर ह्यूमन. Higher amount of toxins are as trophic level increases in the food chain. सही amount of toxins parts per million सही है क्या? ह्यूमंस के पास ज़्यादा आ जाता है. एल्गी में आता है 0.04 पार्ट्स पर मिलियन, फिर उसके बाद zooplankton में 0.23 पार्ट्स पर मिलियन. उसके बाद स्मॉल फिश में आकर थोड़ा इंक्रीज और हो जाता है 2.0207 पार्ट्स पर मिलियन. उसके बाद में आ जाता है 7.36 पार्ट्स पर मिलियन लार्ज फिश में. उसके बाद ह्यूमन जब फिश को खाता है तो ह्यूमन के अंदर आ जाता है 13.55 पार्ट्स पर मिलियन DDT. Biomagnification occurs across trophic levels of food chain. Bioaccumulation occurs within a trophic level increase in the concentration of all substances. Certain tissues of organism bodies due to absorption from food and the environment. इसके बाद bioconcentration occurs when uptake from the water is greater than excretion. और next is pollutant that undergo biomagnification. DDT, dichloro, diphenyl, trichloroethane, hexachlorobenzene, HCB, PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls, toxaphene और monomethyl mercury. उसके बाद insecticide, DDT case study. Insecticide used to control malaria and typhus by killing mosquitoes and lice, commonly used after WW2. Inventor received Nobel Prize. Overused on crops as a pesticide. Concentration of DDT increased 10 million times. Okay, biomagnification. DDT in water, फिर DDT in zooplankton, फिर ज़्यादा हो गया. उसके बाद फिर DDT in small fish, उसमें और ज़्यादा हो गया. फिर DDT in large fish 2 parts per million, उसमें और भी ज़्यादा. DDT in fish eating birds 25 parts per million, DDT concentration increase of 10 million times. Yes. उसके बाद DDT problems, eggshell thinning. DDT interferes with metabolism, calcium, thin shells in predator birds such as osprey, bald eagles, brown pelicans. Birds unable to incubate their eggs without breaking them. Acts as a hormone disruptor, mimics estrogen. ठीक है. उसके बाद DDT problems has impacted sex ratio in some birds. It has a half-life of 15 years. It takes 15 years for its quantity to be half its original. If we start with 100 kilogram, we will still have approximately 1 kg after 100 years. ठीक है. उसके बाद हमारे पास में DDT problems banned in US in 1972, still used overseas to prevent malaria, especially in Africa. It saves millions of lives annually in Africa. Okay, done. ये हो गया है डन. फिर हमारा इस टॉपिक का एक ही पॉइंट रहता है, एक ही स्टेप रहता है, वो है पोस्ट असेसमेंट. इसको ले लेते हैं लोग. Let's see. In southern half of Pakistan, solar radiation have been reported to increased by -%. और आगे चलते हैं. आई होप कि ये आ जाएगा थोड़ी देर में. Pollutants that undergoes magnification is DDT. All. Okay. Since 1900 in northern hemisphere, that % decrease has been recorded in the area of seasonal frozen ground. नोट ऑफ प्रॉब्लम. इसको कंटिन्यू करो. आगे चलते हैं टॉपिक पर. अच्छा, नंबर 70 टाइप ऑफ वेस्ट वाटर. ओके. ऑर्गेनिज्म कन्वर्ट लाइट एनर्जी टू हीट. डैश इज अ डायनेमिक एंटिटी. आप लोगों को पता ही है. इकोसिस्टम here which is not true for a biome comprised of a single species. डन हो गया अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह. चलो जी, अब इसका वीडियो सुन लेते हैं.
वाटर किसी भी इकोसिस्टम का बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट कंपोनेंट है, बिकॉज लाइफ इन एनी इकोसिस्टम इज यूटिलाइजिंग वाटर एज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फंक्शनल पार्ट ऑफ देयर बॉडी and their habitat and environment. Humans be, because they are also part of this ecosystem, they are also dependent upon water for their survival. इसलिए human in habitations, cities, उनके villages आपको सिर्फ उन्हीं जगहों पे नजर आते हैं जहाँ पे कि water जो है वो abundance में मौजूद होगा. So there would be very rare in inhabitation of human society which is present in deserts or in dry environment. And this human, after the industrialization and after this heavy urbanization, unfortunately we are consuming those limited water resources provided by the nature, and we are consuming them blindly. We capture and divert this water which is coming from the natural resources, and we use it for municipal utilization, for the agricultural uses, and for the industrial uses. Because we are dependent upon our agriculture for the food, we are dependent upon our industry for urbanization, and all these need water as an important component. But after this water is used, it is not actually the same composition of the water which we have taken from our environment. Because यहाँ पर हमने इसको यूज करने के बाद we have added certain nutrients, we have added certain chemical compounds and gases, there could be the solid suspended component as well. तो ये वो water नहीं है जिसको कि हमने अपने environment से लिया और उसको utilize किया. So that type of water which is changed or which is adulterated, it is called as dirty water or the waste water. And this waste water is not able to be used for the humans or for the animals and plants, just like unpolluted water. And this waste water is being a very serious issue in our world now. So the waste water is the water which is affected by the human use, because we humans, we are major responsible for this destruction in our environment and affecting the balance of all the natural resources which are available. And this wastewater is used water from the resources, and these resources are domestic, industrial, commercial, agriculture activities. It could be the surface runoff after precipitation, and it could be the storm water, or it could be just a sewage inflow or infiltrated sewage water. So these are the different forms of the wastewater. And what we are adding in this wastewater, we are taking it pure and clean water from the environment, and we are adding pathogens, salts, acids, bases, alkalis, metals, toxic inorganic compounds, and organic matter and suspended solid into this water. And resultantly, we are having few types of the wastewater. It could be domestic, and domestic wastewater is that water which is used for the household activities. Municipal wastewater, apart from the household activities which is used by the different communities, it is also called as the sewage water. Third type is industrial wastewater, which is released by the industries. Agriculture wastewater is the waste product after the agriculture use, and the fifth type is the storm water. And now we will study these different types of wastewater one by one, and then we will figure out how we can resolve this increasing issue of the wastewater recycling. Domestic wastewater, it is coming from the flush toilets, sinks, dishwashers, washing machines, bathtubs, and showers. So if you look at this image, we could see that 40% of domestic wastewater is coming from the toilet flushing, 30% is from the bathing, 15% from the laundry activity, 10% from kitchen, and then 5% from the other sources. While the municipal wastewater is coming from different residential areas, which may different community activities, for example, the shops and houses and different offices, hospitals, schools, any community center, any place which is providing the community services. So there are several sources of this municipal wastewater, which is coming from any urban community and any rural community. Industrial wastewater is coming from the industry, because our industries of all types, they need water to process different chemical processes, or even the physical processes. They need water for this, and they need it in really huge amount. So every industry is using water for those chemical and physical processes, but they are releasing this water as a waste material in our drains or in our water bodies, mostly without recycling. So the quantity and the quality of this waste water, it would vary according to the type of different industry. For example, जैसे कि वो waste water जो कि एक leather industry release करी है, उसमें different type के chemicals add up किए जाएंगे, different type के solid waste add up हो जाएगा उसमें. But those industries, for example, paper and pulp industry, it is using different type of physical processes, chemical processes. तो वो waste water जो कि इन दोनों industries में से release हो रहा है, उसकी amount और nature या उसकी जो biochemical properties हैं और physical properties हैं, they would be different from each other. So it depends upon the type of industry कि वो किस type का waste water release करती है. Agriculture wastewater is used for irrigation, for drinking of livestock, and for cleaning of livestock. Aquaculture is consuming huge amount of water to culture the organisms, for example, the fish and clams and other species. 69 से लेकर 90% global fresh water is being used for agriculture purposes. But once it is returned to the environment, it's not the same water. It is containing pesticides, insecticides, fecal matter of organisms. It might contain pathogens which are coming from those organisms which are being cultured in that water. So it contains many nutrients which could be coming from the fecal matter or from the fertilizers. And then there are several contaminants in agriculture wastewater. Storm wastewater is coming from the rainfalls and storm. Because we know कि जैसे ही कोई rainfall या heavy precipitation होती है, it will just be a surface runoff. और urban or civic societies में, cities में, there will be a drainage system which will drain this storm water, which is coming from different roads and driveways and parking lots, coming from the houses, from the rooftops, from everywhere. So it is bringing all those contaminants from those places which are its origin. And this storm water runoff is the number one cause of stream impairment in any urban area. Because mostly हमारे जो storm drains हैं, उनको हम किसी छोटे drain में या streams के अंदर release कर देते हैं, and it is bringing all those contaminants जिन जगहों से ये आ रहे होंगे और surface runoff की form में या वहाँ से वहाँ के contaminants लेकर streams में add up करते चले जाते हैं. इन 5 types के अलावा हम waste water को 2 categories में classify कर सकते हैं. One is grey water and second is black water. Grey water is considered as comparatively lesser harmful because it contains a lesser amount of contaminants and it is easy to be recycled. So mostly grey water वो water है which is coming from the houses, from the community, in the form of domestic wastewater or the sewage wastewater. So it contains fewer pathogens. There are different techniques जिनकी help से हम इसको recycle कर सकते हैं, and it's just like a flushing of toilet. That water is also included. Landscaping, crop irrigation, और इस तरह के resources जहाँ से कि pathogens का entry या pathogen contamination के chances minimum हो, that type of water is called grey water. For example, the storm water is also an example of grey water. But black water is highly contaminated, mostly by infectious pathogens. Obviously, it is coming from the domestic waste, but it is coming from the toilet waste. So it contains more pathogens. It contains feces, urine, water, and toilet papers from the flushes. So it is difficult to treat because it's not easy to remove pathogens as compared to the solid suspension and as compared to the chemicals. Pathogens are very risky to be removed, or it's difficult to run those treatment plants which can remove these pathogens from the wastewater. So this is the type of the different types of wastewater coming from human use.
So हमारी इसकी वीडियो हो गया कंप्लीट. हम चलते हैं अपनी रीडिंग की तरफ. Humans consume a huge quantity of water from various purposes such as agriculture, industrial and municipal uses. Once that water is used, it is returned back to environment in a different condition, usually a dirty or wastewater. Wastewater is defined as any water that has been affected by human use. Main sources for wastewater are domestic industrial, commercial or agricultural, surface runoff, storm water and sewer inflow or sewer infiltration. Based on the source, the wastewater typically contains pathogens, salts, acids, bases, metals, toxic or inorganic compounds, organic matter and suspended solids. Okay, the domestic wastewater comes from households, the municipal wastewater, also known as sewage from communities, industrial and agricultural activities, or produce. Industrial and agricultural wastewater and storms are also a source of wastewater. Domestic wastewater comprises of toilet, flush, sinks, washing machine, bathtubs and showers. Municipal wastewater comes from residential complexes, shops, houses, offices, schools, hospitals and motor service stations, among others. Industries use excessive amount of water for various chemical and physical processes. The quality and quantity of industrial wastewater depends on the type of industry. Agricultural activities consume about 69 to 90% of the global fresh water. The water is used for irrigation, livestock watering and cleaning and aquaculture. Bulk of this agricultural water is returned to environment with added nutrients. Fertilizers, animal waste and contaminants, pesticides. Storms are also a source of wastewater, as it is the rainwater flows over the ground surface. ठीक है, उसके बाद है it generates wastewater when rains fall on roads, driveways, parking lots or rooftops and other paved surfaces which do not allow water to soak into ground. Stormwater runoff is the number one cause of stream impairment in the urban areas. Okay. Based on contamination, wastewater can be classified as grey water and black water. Grey water comes from households or offices, buildings, or from streams other than toilets. It contains fewer pathogens and is easy to treat and reuse on site for toilet flushing, landscape or crop irrigation, and for other non-potable uses. Black water is generated in toilets and contains feces, urine, water and toilet paper from flush toilets. It contains more pathogens than grey water and is difficult to treat and recycle. In this lesson, the student will learn about types of wastewater or sources of wastewater. Okay, अब हम इसकी प्रॉपर्टीज पढ़ लेते हैं. So ये आ गई हमारी प्रॉपर्टीज. और हाँ जी, तो पढ़ते हैं इसकी प्रॉपर्टीज. टाइप्स ऑफ वेस्ट वाटर. Type of wastewater. Humans capture and divert a lot of the water for agriculture, industrial and municipal use. After the wastewater is used, it is returned to the environment in different conditions, usually as dirty water, wastewater. So wastewater is any water that has been affected by human use. Wastewater is used water from the sources, domestic, industrial, commercial or agricultural activities, surface runoff, storm water, sewer inflow और sewer infiltration. उसके बाद है कंपोनेंट्स में पैथोजन, साल्ट्स, एसिड्स, बेसेस और मेटल्स, टॉक्सिक इनऑर्गेनिक कंपाउंड, ऑर्गेनिक मैटर, सस्पेंडेड सॉलिड्स. उसके बाद टाइप्स है डोमेस्टिक वेस्ट वाटर फ्रॉम हाउस होल्ड, म्यूनिसिपल वेस्ट वाटर फ्रॉम कम्युनिटीज ऑल्सो कॉल्ड सीवेज, इंडस्ट्रियल वेस्ट वाटर फ्रॉम इंडस्ट्रियल एक्टिविटीज़, एग्रीकल्चर वेस्ट वाटर फ्रॉम एग्रीकल्चर एक्टिविटीज़ एंड स्टॉर्म वाटर. उसके बाद डोमेस्टिक वेस्ट वाटर, फ्लश टॉयलेट्स, सिंक्स, डिशवॉशर्स, वॉशिंग मशीन, बाथटब्स और शावर्स. उसके बाद म्यूनिसिपल वेस्ट वाटर, रेजिडेंशियल, शॉप्स, हाउसेज, ऑफिस, स्कूल्स, हॉस्पिटल, मोटर सर्विस स्टेशन एंड अदर्स. और इंडस्ट्रियल वेस्ट वाटर, ह्यूज वाटर यूज in industrial activities. Every industry uses water for chemical or physical processes. Quantity and quality depends on the type of industry. Site. उसके बाद है एग्रीकल्चरल वेस्ट वाटर, इरिगेशन, लाइफ स्टॉक वाटरिंग एंड क्लीनिंग, एक्वाकल्चर. 90% ऑफ ग्लोबल फ्रेश वाटर यूज इन एग्रीकल्चर, और bulk of it is returned to the soil waterways or discharged with added nutrients and contaminants. ठीक है. उसके बाद है जनाब storm waste water rainfall that flows over the ground surface. It is created when rain falls on roads, driveways, parking lots, rooftops and other paved surfaces that do not allow water to soak into the ground. Storm water runoff is the number one cause of stream impairment in urban areas. सही हो गया. उसके बाद में हमारे पास क्लासिफिकेशन और बेसिक कंटेमिनेशन, ग्रे वाटर और ब्लैक वाटर. उसके अलावा ग्रे वाटर में है जनरेटेड इन हाउस और ऑफिस बिल्डिंग्स फ्रॉम स्ट्रीम्स other than toilets, contains fewer pathogens, easier to treat and reuse on site for toilet flushing और लैंडस्केप और क्रॉप इरिगेशन, अदर नॉन पोर्टेबल पर्पसेस और यूजेस. ठीक है. फिर आगे है ब्लैक वाटर, जनरेटेड इन टॉयलेट्स, कंटेन्स पैथोजेंस, कंटेन्स फीसिस यूरिन वाटर एंड टॉयलेट पेपर फ्रॉम फ्लश टॉयलेट. सही है. उसके बाद डिफ़िकल्ट टू ट्रीट एंड रिसाइकल. चले जी, हमारा ये टॉपिक हो गया कंप्लीट इस वीडियो में. और उसके अलावा हमारा इसका लास्ट स्टेप रहता है अभी असेसमेंट वाला, ये भी कर लेते हैं. बस ये आ जाए असेसमेंट, ये आने में भी काफ़ी टाइम लेती है. cannot be displayed because an internal server error has occurred. और ये error तरीका खत्म होगा. Let's try once again और hope for the best. और यहाँ पर ये error मेरे ख्याल में तो ख़त्म हो गया है. अब इसको खुल जाना चाहिए. खुल जाए तो बेहतर है. अब यहाँ पोस्ट असेसमेंट रहती थी हमारी, वो हम कर लेते हैं. हाँ जी जनाब. Dash occurs within a trophic level, accumulation, bioconcentration, biomagnification. Occurs within a trophic level. सब trophic levels में तो आती हैं, लेकिन मुझे bioconcentration. Let's see. Concentration of persistent pollutants is highest in dash for food chain. Primary consumers consist